This is the last of our public meetings that we're running. Obviously, this is just the start of the process, or maybe not, I shouldn't say the start. Hanson's been working on things for this property for a long time. So this is hopefully just building some momentum to move forward. We know that there will be lots of work done after we step away from the project. But for us, this is our opportunity to get feedback from you. We're really excited to hear your thoughts, responses to designs. We're at a conceptual stage right now, so this is, we're just 2 weeks into design at this point. We've been doing a lot of site analysis. Took all of your feedback from the first meeting, those of you who were there. It's nice to see some new faces too. And we will be taking your feedback from what we hear today and moving forward again and trying to come up with a final proposal to give to the town by early July. And then it'll be up to the town to move forward from there. So you can feel free to be in touch with us. We'll leave our emails up for you until the end of June, and then we'll sort of be handing off the torch to Hanson. So, but for now, we're in this exciting design phase. This is the fun, creative part. It makes us really excited. We love doing it, and we hope that we can get you all excited about it too. Don't be too attached to any details at this point, just as a disclaimer. These are all still maneuvering around in the works and up for debate and discussion. So we'll do a little presentation and then we'll break up into groups, have some conversations, and come back together for a big discussion again. You all know this history. This is, can you see the final history? I know you guys do, okay. You all know this history. We are really thinking about this site in its legacy, primarily from when the hospital was open. So we're also interested in what happened before, and so we'll be incorporating some of those thoughts into it as well. We're interested in the agricultural legacy prior to the hospital opening, and even earlier than that. We've heard some great stories about those early days. And so, but really we are starting off from this moment in time when the hospital was built, closed in '92, became this ruin. That gorgeous architecture really fell into disrepair, sadly. And you all know this. The final Plymouth County Hospital Reuse Committee, who we're working with directly, began in 2016, trying to really move this forward for the last time. And we are really happy to be a part of that process. You all know the building came down last year. I don't know if everybody's been to the site at this point. It's quite stunning without the building there. We didn't have the opportunity to see it, but it is, an incredible blank slate at this point. Not the entirety of the 55 acres, but where the hospital was, we see a great deal of potential. So we are trying to move forward with what the town decided on for this municipal park. Some of you have heard this before, but just to mention it again, we're thinking about elements for all ages, that this is going to be a park for everyone. Space for events, this might include potential farmers markets, or a performance of some variety or another. There was lots of different ideas voiced at the last community meeting about what those events and programming might be. Something that would memorialize the history in some manner, knowing that there's a lot of town investment in this site and in what happened. Lots of people have family members with stories tied into the site. We want to respect that. Something that ties into the existing historical area around the Bonney House. We know there's interest in creating some sort of historical village there. We're not going to end up focusing on that so much today, just so you know, but it's in our minds. We're thinking about it moving forward. We'll be trying to address some circulation issues, knowing that it's going to, if attendance in this area increases, there will be needs for parking, need to address how this is going to impact neighbors, etc. And then thinking about the nearby recreation areas and trails, so how this fits into the larger Hanson scheme. Here are a couple pictures from the last meeting. Those of you who were there, it was awesome. So great to see you all so engaged and excited thinking about what could be on this site. We were very inspired by that. This site, its location in the very center of town, it's that little funny property in green there. If you aren't already familiar with the awesome shape of this parcel, it's pretty fun. It's really close both to commuter rail and to the center of the town. While there might be some, I don't know how much pedestrian access there is along High Street, there's some barriers there it seems, it does still feel like this is really the heart of Hanson. And we are excited about the ways that this can be used as sort of a central common space space for residents of the town. We know, again, that there are some potential barriers. That's High Street. We know that there aren't sidewalks along this road, and this comes into play when you think about the Bay Circuit Trail, which runs right along the property, but doesn't actually run through it and runs along High Street without any sidewalks. So we're thinking about ways that the site can be used in order to move that trail slightly off the road, take advantage of the natural assets, some of the meadows, some of the woods, these great areas in this parcel, in order to really tie into this awesome trail system.
Can you just say what the Bay Circuit Trail is?
Yeah, the Bay Circuit Trail runs around the entirety of the Metro Boston area. Hanson's just one small stretch of this trail. And as you can see, it kind of skirts the edge of Wampatuck Pond, comes down High Street, and then down into Burridge. And you know, there's this great opportunity to make use of what is on this site. So we're thinking about that. Hand over to you.
So the existing conditions on the site, there's essentially neighborhoods to the west and to the east. Can everybody see my name with what? And our area of focus on this 55 acres is the southern portion. So what we're kind of delineating as the village and the open area. Thank you. So when we refer to the village, it's where the historic structures are, the majority of the remaining infrastructure. The open area is the former hospital site, and that's surrounded by forest, and that's where the demolition is. And for those of you that haven't been to the site and you wanted to see how impactful the demolition was, this is prior to demolition, and we can see the scar after the site. So there's a tremendous amount of disturbance on site, and that still remains now. But although there's been a lot of demolition, there's still some remains of historical features on the site, such as the Bailey chimney, a piggery that's in the northern portion where the meadows are. So it's kind of out of our scope, but it's still an asset on the site. And then the Bonnie House, which is near the main entrance. Circulation is very important to us moving forward. We're only going to display just a little bit of the analysis that we've done. But we need to really understand how people use the site and how we impact it with the design of the municipal park, because it's going to change a lot, and we don't want to affect the surrounding area. Primarily right now, the vehicular flow of traffic is along High Street and Pierce Avenue, with the main entrance along High Street, and the main parking area is centrally located right near that High Street entrance. There's some undesired foot traffic in this northern portion where the meadows are, and some folks are actually using it as a disposal site, so that's something we want to avoid in the future. And an objective of ours moving forward is to delineate the foot traffic and make it just a little bit more user-friendly, and possibly if we can create trails that accentuate the existing historical features on site. So this is the current area right now. This is the main parking area, and that's something that we're going to look to either change significantly or leave the existing use as is. The two unused entrances are to the southwest along High Street, and then all the way south along Pierce Avenue. And those are potential areas that we may use moving forward, either for pedestrian access or vehicular traffic. And this is just a shot of the main entrance. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with on High Street. The unused entrance along High Street to the south, and then the Pierce Avenue entrance to the south. And this is also, so circulation is going to be crucial as we design, because it may increase funding for us if we can accommodate a certain amount of vehicles. And also we need to really be conscientious of how we implement parking and how we design for access throughout the space, because as I said, we don't want to impact the neighborhood, and we don't want to create any more disturbance. Slopes is something that we're really looking at, because since the site has been, since the former hospital site has been removed, there's been a lot of disturbance on site, and these slopes have been impacted. This is just our area of concern right now in this southeastern portion. And we can just see here, I apologize. The slopes currently right now are pretty significant. They're a 50% grade, and there isn't any vegetation right now. And so when you have a significant rainfall, they're going to erode, and sediment and pollutant runoff will be a big issue. And we can already see that it's impacted some of the vegetation, the larger vegetation on site. So although we're looking at this as a constraint, it's also an asset. Some of the fill that was brought on site, we may be able to pull back and use as a landscape feature, which could be interesting in the design process. Some of the design considerations that we're looking at is we want to phase the design. We don't want to put too much on the town too soon. We don't want to suggest things that are beyond the town's reach up front. It will be important to prioritize what Hanson needs up front rather than implementing designs that aren't necessary long term. And then we're looking at secondary benefits. Can we design things that either bring people into Hanson or create more funding? And then we're looking at the neighborhood impact. So designing something that perhaps isn't too, that doesn't have a lot of noise pollution and light pollution with the neighborhood, because we want to keep a good relationship with the folks that inhabit this area. And then the ecological impact, there's been a lot of disturbance, so how we can mitigate that moving forward and improve the site, but also use the existing assets to our benefit. And then feasibility, that's something that's obviously a concern of ours, and we're going to start looking at the cost of a lot of these designs and materials moving forward. And then the long-term maintenance, which goes hand in hand with feasibility, because we don't want something that, again, is beyond the town's reach. So when we're looking at phasing, we're really trying to understand basically what the town wants up front, as I said, and that may be acquiring funding initially in the first 1 to 3 years, or playscapes, or establishing some sort of maintenance staff that can handle it in the first 1 to 3 years, and then moving on, we go into hardscape pavilion parking. So looking at something that is a little bit more expensive as time goes on, and then over time, as funding grows, we may look at an amphitheater or paved paths, all those larger projects, and then we focus on long-term maintenance of the site.
Okay, nice. So again, remember we're still in conceptual realm. So we're going to present kind of the general concepts, relationships of functions happening on site in each one of these designs, and then talk about the specifics. So the specifics are kind of ideas for what might happen in these spaces. They can be juggled around. In all likelihood, the final design is going to pull pieces from all of these different, maybe these three, or some new design that we are inspired to create based on what we hear today. So no one design is what what we'll be moving forward with, but we're going to probably be taking things from all. But what we really are excited to get to hear from you all is kind of a big picture. What should this park feel like? What should the experience be? And some of that is thinking about the different functions throughout the area in the park. So again, this is just the southern portion. You'll see this image more clearly in a minute, but there's the Bonnie House up there at the top. So we're really focused in on this southern area for now. So this first design, which you will see there, is called Rolling Meadow Design 1. This one creates a fairly distinct park space from the village. So those are separated off. There is no longer kind of that clear open pathway from one area to the other. Instead, we're trying to enclose that southern portion and create something that feels like a lovely, natural, quiet, serene space. In this design, we are thinking about a park space that is lower maintenance, that is a little more less programmed. There aren't big activities happening. It's going to be this kind of quiet area, secluded off from the bustling activity of the historic village and the existing uses like the food pantry and the community gardens up north. There's a lovely maple alley in the woods there, and we see bringing back that maple alley as a way to get people into the woods, so that in that woodsy area to the east, overlooking the reservoir and the cranberry bogs, that you could have some gathering space in that area. So these are the relationships. Those three spaces kind of end up being fairly separate from one another, tied together by trails. So again, we have this serene natural area, some playing in the woods area, and this one really focuses on habitat and some landforms. So you'll see these may look a little bit weird. Those are some general concepts for contour lines. We're seeing an opportunity in many of these designs to take that fill that is currently eroding off into the trees and move it into the center of the park to create some different topography that might be interesting to walk through. Not just one big open experience, but that so you have something to explore as you're walking through. And this park experience is really just one big meadow. So you'd have something that would be paths that would be mown. This would be really low maintenance. Lovely flowers, grasses that you'd be able to observe, walk through, and you just create this nice, ecologically friendly, low impact space. That's design one. Okay, design two. This one responds a lot to the elements that we heard from our last community meeting. We tried to bring in a lot of different ones. We couldn't bring in all of them at the same time. But for this, we're thinking of one big park experience. So the village with the Bonnie House and the food pantry and the community gardens become very tied to the southern area. There's a picnic area that keeps them, that sort of brings them together in the center. But we see there being a central playing and gathering space in that southern portion, and then lots of bustling uses up in the village as well. That all kind of part of one big park feel. And this is kind of a bustling, active park space. The big features in this one, and we are, again, just to remind you, our job is to think outside the box, to give you something to inspire you, and also knowing that, you know, in implementation, you may not implement exactly what we propose. It might look slightly different. It might look, you know, bigger, smaller, whatever works for the town in the end. But some of the things we're thinking about here are areas that are flexible for different uses. You could have pavilions used for events, or that lawn area could be used for a farmer's market or a carnival coming in, setting up shop in that southern park area. There's a dog park separated off from the main park zone. So you could have people playing frisbee off in the big park area, and then the dog park separated by some vegetation and trees that would grow in and create a kind of separate dog nook. This one also includes a spiral mound. This is a big dream here. We know that this may not be fully implementable, but we wanted to dream. So the inspiration here is a variety of different things. Again, thinking about how can we use the fill that's on site, the things that are eroding trees, to our own benefit and advantage. There's lots of land that isn't currently vegetated. There's room to play. And you could build something up that either has an ADA accessible trail or something a little more natural, like the one on the left, just mown paths that you can walk up, to give people a sense of something they can overlook the park. Because right now it's one big flat expanse. So creating topographical changes is going to allow people a different experience. You might be in one area laying down on the ground, having a picnic with your family, or you can climb up to the top of the hill, roll down or bike down, depending on what that hill looks like. So that's what the spiral mound is. And in this one, we're also thinking about how to help the city qualify for funding. There is a grant that requires 100 parking spots in order to qualify for it. So we're imagining what this would look like if we really expanded the parking options. The town may not need this much parking at this point in time for this park. There are some options that you can use reinforced turf that wouldn't look like an asphalt parking lot, that would infiltrate into the ground and would allow you to expand parking options. So we have one band of reinforced parking that would increase your ability to host big events in this space, maybe bring people in from other towns for large events, but wouldn't look like a giant eyesore. You will, however, see in this design a definite increase in parking, one additional parking lot in the southern portion of the site, and use of that, the old main hospital entryway in order to bring people in both through the village or through that southern portion. I should mention also that the spiral mound was partially inspired by the circular drive that used to be in front of the hospital. It's a beautiful feature, and we thought, how can we bring that back? Maybe it's a raised spiral mound, maybe it's something that sits on the ground and is a little labyrinth you can walk through, that would certainly be a more affordable option there. But something that kind of harkens back to that lovely large circular shape. All right, there's number 2. Number 3, this is the historic garden. This is again a really different feel. We're trying to create some ties between these spaces, but also slightly distinct areas with different kind of emotional feels, experiences. You have the existing uses of the food pantry in the historic area up in the village, and then a kind of central play, picnic area, maybe with some play structures. In all of these, we haven't gotten specific about what those play structures would be. That'll come with time. We know there's different options there, a more traditional playground or something that might be logs, things you could explore on for slightly older kids. And then these are all kind of leading you into this larger garden area. This one we're thinking of really more as kind of a contemplative garden that focuses on the history of the site. So we use the old hospital footprint here as a gathering area. So it doesn't exist anymore, but we know where it was. Creating a kind of marker of some kind, perhaps a raised platform or something just done in grass or in vegetation to mark where that footprint was, to give you something as you're walking into the park, you have this space to kind of center yourself. Perhaps events could happen there. It's a large footprint, so there's plenty of space for there to be events in that spot. And you have this beautiful overlook to the southern portion of the site. That also looks out onto a circular loop. We've created different kinds of paths in these. We see there are different options. Some of them could be just a woodsy trail, some of them an ADA accessible path. One of them a more winding, loopy one in the second design. And this one is a more formal circle with a big lawn-like area in the center where you could have outdoor movies or events of some kind in that space. The kind of nook-like areas on the edge could become their own gardens. They could emphasize native plantings with educational trails that run through them, providing you with an opportunity to explore those spaces and have kind of a fun, either educational time or a nice quiet gathering space. Okay, so that is a 3 separate designs. We see these as fairly distinct. We know they might be a little bit hard to compare. What we're hoping to get from you all is a sense of what's working, what's not working, and really which one of these feels. If it's a sort of nature trail-like park, if it's an active program, lots of stuff going on, park where there could be many different events, space for flexible use, or kind of a more historic emphasis garden space.
So right now, Allison and I will pass out some questionnaires, and we'd really like for people to just chew on it for a moment by themselves and then discuss it with the folks sitting with you. And amongst the table, ideally delegate one person to discuss a design that the table chooses as their favorite design, or if you don't like any of the designs, discuss that with us. And you can either sit there and discuss it, but we'll take about 15 minutes just to kind of review the designs amongst yourself and then fill out these questionnaires.
Hi, my name's Maureen Tony, and we've decided that we kind of like the design 2 to start with. And what we started with and what we ended with was we liked it because it had the most parking. And that's a big concern because there's a lot of people in town who want to go to places and no one wants to walk anywhere because there's no sidewalks to walk on and it's not safe. Some of us are getting a little bit older and we're concerned about how far we can walk even if there are sidewalks. So we want to make sure that this is accessible for everybody in town. So that's kind of why we were thinking a lot about the parking. So then also with the parking, we're a little bit concerned on the bottom part where it's along Pierce Ave, and because it seems like it's in someone's backyard, and then we actually know someone here it is in his backyard. So that kind of is a concern because cars are noisy, people coming out of cars are very noisy as well. The other issue we have, and we're not too sure about, is the amphitheater also up here now for the same reason. It's kind of like right in the backyard. We love the idea of having one, but maybe, you know, somewhere further up, kind of maybe where the playground area was. And so we kind of liked that idea as well. We also were thinking about the playground. It doesn't say, I know that you had mentioned that the ADA, you know, we were looking at not being sure what we were going to have there, but it's really, really important to make sure everything is ADA compliant, not just the paths, so everything needs to be that way. And there's all different types of capabilities for, you know, everybody wants to use whatever playground area we do have, so I love a really good swing. The other couple of things, a couple of us love the spiral mount.
Yes.
So one of us who is not standing up here right now doesn't like it at all, but we really liked the idea of it, and we thought it was really cool because it tied in with that whole circular drive that you were talking about, and I love that whole part of giving, you know, credence to the past, and I personally love that. Another part that we were talking about was the dog park itself, and a couple of concerns were about liability, because dogs are animals and they don't always do what we want them to. We love them to death, but sometimes they're a little bit out of control, and what happens if they get loose, you know, there's liability issues that way. And the other concern is cleaning up after them. I mean, you can put the little bags and have people clean up after them, but dogs don't always poop where you want them to. So sometimes you don't have a bag when you need it, you mean to go back and you don't, and so it's just, you know, that's a little bit of a concern and not sure how to deal with that. So,
Fence.
but we do like the idea of kind of keeping them separate so that they're not running around, you know, and free dogs or happy dogs. One last thing I think is the chimney, the old chimney. We really like the idea of having something in that area, like maybe a pavilion, and maybe a memorial. That would be a really nice place to have the PCH, you know, maybe like a statue or a plaque or whatever, because it's still a physical part of it. So we'd like that idea. And we were wondering a couple of other things. Is it possible for like extra parking, maybe in the middle area where, to the left of where the chimneys are, just for these big events, so that people can get in there, and maybe a little bit north, or I think it's north, above the water tower. One thing that we had talked about was Hanson Day. Those of you who have been to it, I've never been there, but I've heard lots of great things about it. Hanson Day, I guess, brought in 1,500 people. That's a heck of a lot of people, so our concerns are how many parking places do you need for 1,500 people coming into an event? And so that's going to have to be something to be thought about. So, and then access for fire and emergency. I noticed that there's patrol car access, but you know, fire trucks are bigger than patrol cars. And then emergency, if you have a whole bunch of people in there, somebody might need an ambulance. So, you know, we have to make sure that those can actually fit through everywhere that they need to. One last thing, for people in the area, we need closing hours. So will there be gates so they can be closed so people know that it's time to be gone? Okay? Did I miss anything?
No.
Okay.
What we did was we liked the concept of the design 1, and we combined it with design 2, the second and lower half, and for the following reasons. We love the access to the amphitheater here, but what we would like to do is put some bathrooms near the amphitheater and the pavilion. So if we could locate the pavilion here, I'm sorry, the amphitheater here with some bathrooms and the pavilion, when you have a show or whatever, it just seems much more convenient to us. And of course, the access thing here.
Maple Lily?
Yeah,
Yeah.
one of those. Would be really nice here. We loved the spiral thing, only if you put a fountain at the top.
That's a good idea.
Well, you gotta have a destination.
Yep, and then have colored lights up there.
So we include, I'm sorry?
Yeah, a piper from the water tower?
No. Yes, we could use them. Oh, there you go. You got the pressure all built up and everything. It doesn't have to be a huge thing. It's just a 110 outlet will take care of it. It's a little bowling thing. When you get up there, you say, oh, look at the pretty fountain, you go back down. We have the playground. Parking is a concern. So we like the idea that we have this parking here, and we added it up in here from Plan 3, I believe it was. So as many parking places as you can have without being overwhelmed by parking, but it's necessary. I always am uncomfortable when we have to go to the high school graduation day. It's not good. And I remember the very first day I drove into the high school, and John was a friend of mine. And I got there, I got out of my truck, and I said, John, where's the parking? And he says, oh, it's over there and it's over there. No, it's not enough, we need more. So, that's about it.
Well, before we break up, does anybody have any questions for Jim?
If you have water at the top of the hill,
Yeah.
people are going to assume it's potable.
Oh.
So there's one more place to test going forward. Just saying.
We'll make it
There's a well up
yeah,
there, right,
thank you.
Alan?
Okay.
Did you say,
Over in
which
Lawrence.
was which? It was the top of one, the bottom of two?
I think that's what it was, wasn't it? Yes, bottom of 2.
The top of one, with the addition of some parking similar to, I think it's 2. Yeah. If you take the parkings on the north end from design 2, add that on to design 1, that will give you the parking here as well as here, and the parking is down here on design 2. So it's 2 and 1 basically combined together. Have all the attributes, except you need to relocate a bathroom right up in the
In a fountain.
You know what's going to happen.
This is a narrow road. It's not really true.
Our little corner here, we didn't look so much at what design it was. We looked for elements that made sense or things that we think would make even more sense. And so maybe we'd call ours the rolling, playful, historic metal loop system. But concepts we think that are being introduced, but we really, really like and want to see emphasizes the multi-generational appeal, a destination for all ages, tots, elders, and everyone in between, 365 days a year, weather permitting, and probably dawn to dusk. You don't want to have nighttime activities there unless it's something really unusual. We very much like the idea of keeping or restoring an open mode type landscape for more safety and more confidence that you know who's there and who isn't. And it's a landscape that we used to have open things we called fields. Now they've all got houses in them. We need to bring back some of that landscape. And around the edges there can be a lot of natural sort of shrubbery things, the early young forest and things that grow into the trees, things that are actually valuable and also in short supply across the state. So it could be ecological as well as inviting. And speaking of parking and vehicles, we feel that whatever the patterns are, it needs to be a pattern that invites police patrols to spin through easy and often, and doesn't create out-of-the-way little destinations for bad behavior, drugs, drinking, disposal, all those things. Open lines of sight, at least to a fairly good extent, are very important. Because the stuff that's growing up there now, the vegetation, it just has grown all wild by itself. And some of it is just plain not very nice vegetation. Part of the vegetation thing is even more than is already shown on these designs. The area near where the old communication tower is that thankfully fell down, that used to be pasture. Some of us remember it. It was just open grass and mowed. We could restore that as a mowed area and have more open space than is already designed without a whole lot of work. And among the different elements that are being talked about here, we think it'd be terrific if 3 or 4 or 5 of these could present inviting backdrops for photos, like prom photos or wedding party photos. There's hardly any place to go outside of Kewanee that's inviting for that now. What a shame. We've got a good-sized town with a lot of green space, but no photo opportunities, I mean, come on, this is a great opportunity. As far as concerts go, we don't see this as Tanglewood East. It's not primarily a performance thing, although Shakespeare in the Park might be fun. But as some of us have experience with noise, because it's regulated as an air pollutant, you have to be very considerate of your neighbors. Noise travels through trees and shrubs. The thing that stops noise is barriers, either land or physical barriers. So you need to be very thoughtful. If you had a place which was intended to have performance, which direction you aim the sound, hopefully away from the residences, not towards it. That's how you stay good neighbors there. And speaking of the landscape and slopes, someone here has seen slides built into a hill. Not just a hill with a slide built in. It's a very cool thought. You know, gravity is free. You know, we should be using it. And one thing I heard, dog park, we didn't mention it, but dog parks, I've done some research on that, and dog parks are successful if the dog owners themselves become organized, responsible, and accountable for managing it. And there are ways you can do it, but it's not maybe the highest priority, but if the canine owning public is to be thought about, there are ways that they can help themselves, and it shouldn't fall on the responsibility of people who don't own dogs. There are success stories and also failure stories that we can learn from about that. But the idea of a lot of these elements, just combining them and maybe going even a little further.
Great. Thank you.
I just want to go back to what he said about the open field that's mowed. It made me think of World's End in Hingham. If you walk there, the center is an open field, and it is high, but the trails are around it, so that when you look, you see that openness, and it makes it feel bigger, and you can see people. And so I really like that concept of open field in the center.
Any other volunteers? We've got about 10 minutes.
No, bear park didn't make it. That's okay. That could be in the flex use area. So good evening, everyone. My name is Matt Dyer. So just a couple ideas that we liked on Design 2, the Playful Loop. We really liked the picnic area, but we wanted to move it more closer to the parking area, because with my experience with managing parks, people want to drive up to the parking area. They want to be closer to the bathroom, so we just want to move that up closer there. But also remove the community garden and put it in a less traffic area, so that way my crops don't disappear throughout the day. The other concept that we liked a lot was from Design 1, was the kind of the hills. It kind of made the space exactly what she just said, was a little bit bigger, makes you kind of feel like you're in a very intimate setting with the meadows and mowed pathways. What else did we have? A flex use area would be nice. In the old chimney area, we kind of imagined was to kind of memorialize the hospital and kind of have pictures of what used to be in that area. So kind of like on the Greenway up near like the Boston Harbor, how they have those beautiful displays in the glass. We were imagining something along that area. And we've liked multiple bathrooms, multiple parking areas. We also liked the access roads for emergency vehicles and whatnot. We had concerns with the spiraling mound as just for maintenance purposes of just like, how do you mow something like that with that steep angle? So maybe like putting some grass, some wildflowers on the side if we were going to do something. But I like the idea of having a destination at the end. It kind of makes your journey more complete. And then we just wanted to make sure that we kind of utilized all the areas. We kind of thought that pocket that kind of juts out to the east was kind of like, what is that, right? So have some sort of purpose for it would be nice. Interpretive trails, I think, are really important to kind of educate the youth and just the public in general of what's a maple tree, what's an oak tree. I'm sure we have a really good species diversity up at the Plymouth County Hospital. And then with that being said, and then swings along the pathways would kind of be cool. And just making sure that it's really well maintained, because that was both Sharon's and my concern was, if it's not maintained, people don't want to go to it, right? And just making sure that it's a beautiful destination for all. That's it.
Hi everyone, I'm Ken. I don't have too much to add besides what you guys said. We did prefer the playful loop, like most of you guys did. We think it's more multifunctional. We think it's going to attract more people too. So the more people there, the more activity, the more people to keep it safe. So if you had, say, the rolling meadow, there might be places to hide. So I'm concerned about vagrants and drugs and such. So. We also like open space. In the playful loop, there's a lot of spaces where you can do X activity, Y activity, food trucks, movies, school or library events. You can get a blanket, lay down in the field, watch a movie or something like that. We did like the Maple Alley, I believe, French, so that way. We also, we like 2 bathrooms. I think the Rolling Meadow had one way up north, and we did like the 2 bathrooms. I think both the other 2 options had 2 bathrooms. Number one, one of us mentioned it was almost just like someone's backyard, so it would be the attraction to go to your own backyard and drive 15 minutes to hang out in a field where I have my backyard, I can hang out there. As far as 3, we do like the historical concept, but I don't know if that's going to attract many people just to go out there for history's sake. And then as far as concerns, everything you guys have said, we echo that we want the gates to be open and closed at certain times. Also, who's going to close the gates? Is that some official comes by, a police officer? Parking near houses on High Street. That's a major concern of mine. And then the bathrooms, that's also, when do they close for security's sake? So that's all we got.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else that would like to present?
I'd like to say one thing. I just actually want to thank both of you guys. I'm one of the members on the committee. No, Mary Ann, I don't need to be on the committee. No. I honestly, my whole thing was this little girl here, and that's what I say to everybody. I was on one of the original committees 10 years ago to get a playground in this town. And I got on the second committee so I could try to get a playground in this town. Just because, and it's not just about playground, but it's like, you know, when you have a little one, like I would go to Whitman Park. But Whitman, it was more, I liked the design. It wasn't, like I said, just about playground. It was designed so that it would be accessible from the very young to the older people. And it kind of, you've done everything. Like Playful Loop is good. I do like a couple things of how Jim put Rolling Meadow Park in. That was kind of, I'm considered. My one thing, yeah, the park is cool. The spiral mound is a great concept. I mean, I would have never thought of anything like that. So I want to thank you so much for doing this.
The only thing that we came up with is instead of having the playgrounds way back where they are, you've got an open area on all of the pictures, right behind where the community garden and the bathrooms are written, on that land there. That would be the ideal place to put a playground because it would be up front near all the parking areas, plus you'd have a bathroom closer to it. You could still have your amphitheater and your picnic area right behind it, so that everything would be there. And if you want to do the trails or anything else that would be, that made people want to walk away from that area and go somewhere else. I think the playground should be up in the front where it's more accessible than way in the back and just a small little spot as opposed to a big field. They can either go sledding or in winter time.
It's a short distance.
We don't have the spiral.
Are there any final questions or comments that anyone has?
Yeah, can we take a vote on who likes the spiral?
Guess which one at our table didn't win?
One thing I think we're interested in is just looking at the priorities of the town moving forward. I don't know if anybody wants to say something that is, crucial moving forward that we need to implement within the first, 1 to 3 years. Since this is going to be phased, we would like to know, if there's a thing, an actual object or a feature in the park that you guys would like to see in the early stages of this design. I don't know if you guys want to, if there's any feedback with that. Yeah.
This area, as you're speaking behind the community, but behind the community gap, that area used to be an open field. I think that would be one of the first priorities, because if you can look across there, you can see into the area. That's all covered with a pucker brush, but you can't see in there, and God knows what's going to go on there. And we should clear that out first off and get it so it's accessible and open.
Just since, we've heard the crime concern, just a show of hands, I mean, who here thinks it's a concern in Hanson Floral Park? Just crime or vagrants or any similar behavior? Thank you. And we're just about ready to shut this down, but we'd be happy. So if anybody wants to stay and ask us questions, we'd be happy to answer.
I just want to say one thing. I've just been sitting down here listening to everybody. One of the main concerns I think that we have up there is parking. I think the design should have a lot of parking up there, whether it's in one area or whether it's in like 2 or 3 different areas. I think that's the most important thing. I don't know, I've been over to Hanover, it's got a big park over there, and I think a lot of people have been there from here. And it's a large area, but they do have 4 big parking areas, and they're spread out all over the place, so that people can go up some places, they don't have to walk too fast to do whatever they're doing. That's all I got to say.
Thank you.
Any other priorities?
Well, we're talking about parking lots. I like the idea of the, I don't know what you refer to it as technically, but it's a surface that is grass as well as hard pack or something. Last time I was at Williams College, is the first place I saw that executed really well. It looks like a fancy concrete block on end, and they fill it with topsoil and plant grass. And as you look across, it looks like a grass field, but you can drive on it, park on it, etc. And that's, I think, the kind of parking lot that would work best, because it's so flexible.
We use the pavers. Pavers, Jim. They have to make those pavers that take the water and percolate through the pavers and around the pavers.
They're open, it's open core. Yeah.
That's what reinforced turf would do. It's still let water infiltrate.
Oh, you guys know what you're doing.
I just like to say I'm part of the community garden, and I definitely, not that any of these is getting rid of that, but that is important to me. And I know we've been talking about putting up hopefully like a 6-foot fence or something to keep the deer out. But as traffic increases, having that be a space where people don't feel like they can just come in and take. Though we want to give, as a garden, we are, giving to the food bank, and we want to invite the community in, but we do want to keep it a little bit. Yeah, it's not a free-for-all, but we definitely want to increase what we're doing with the garden, and some of us want beehives and things like that. But and then also, I think what's really important for my family is a place to walk. I know we haven't mentioned that, and it might be just assumed, but trails throughout, I think I would love that.
When we did a survey a few years ago for the open space plan, the number 1 public amenity that was desired by people was walking trails that are well marked. And we could assume that, but we need to not assume it. We need to make sure that's very, very important here. But also, as far as the traffic goes, we need to be aware that there's already functions that are going on there now. There are people who work at, people who are clients of the food bank. There are people who work at the community garden. There's traffic in and out daily to the water tower, and maybe Sunday too, and that's pretty important. And it's almost like we should consider there might be more than one sort of traffic pattern or system to consider or to plan for. Might be a main primary public one with, easy in and out, easy out with sight lines and safe, but also other forms of traffic. And also the fact that most of the time the traffic will be low, but there will be times when you have events where a lot of traffic will be high. You need to be able to handle both. And so that, I think, is one of the most important considerations in the overall design, as well as the fact that most of the pavement that's there now is crummy. It's maybe should be just ground up and used over again. So good luck to us.
One comment, I think having electric car chargers also would be very good. I know we have an electric car, and knowing where one is, they show on apps, and it can be a destination for people if there are some car chargers there. But I would just say, as a member of the committee, we met today, and one of the things we were talking about as we move along over the years, that we would love to have participation from people for different committees or groups or subcommittees as we go along. So I just wanted to ask permission. We have a mailing list that we would occasionally mail out and say, this is what we're doing, and we're looking for some volunteers for this or that. So if you would prefer not to be on that mailing list, and we said, just let me know, or email back if we send something, say get me off this. But we'd like to really have participation as we move along. And one thing, as an example, we collected different things from the hospital site before it was demolished, and there are, just one example is the bathroom stalls were made of marble, and so we have marble that's, I don't know, an inch or two thick. So we have one that could be this lovely table, obviously cleaned off. But also people threw all this marble out the window, so we have all these different pieces of marble. We have pieces of glass from the solarium, so at some point we might like to reach out to artists and say, this is material from the hospital, how can we use this to make it part of the park or some festival? So those kind of things. So there are ideas, we don't even know what all those ideas are, but we'd love to get participation from the community.
I noticed that there wasn't like a covered place to gather, like something like a picnic area that's covered.
I think that we just didn't label it. There is a pavilion, so that was our fault there. I apologize.
I'm going to send you guys a design.
All right.
So any other questions? Well, before we close out, I just want to say what a pleasure it's been so far to work with the town of Hanson. It's a pretty long drive for us to come here, but we always feel rejuvenated after we talk with the community. And I think Allison and I both feel like we had the best clients and community out of all the projects at our school, and we feel quite fortunate to have all the feedback, and it's definitely going to be implemented into our designs.
Thank you so much. Really, this is such an honor to get to sit in on this process and to hear all of your thoughts. And we truly do value and take them into consideration. So,
Thank you.
Thank you.
If you need to reach us, this is how to reach us. If you don't have email, we can give you our phone number. Just let us know. But if you need to be in contact with us, we're available for the next few weeks. So, thank you so much for coming out tonight.